Hi y'all, my name is Mr. Chao and welcome to Chao Time. This is the first installment in a mini series of older watches that I have in my collection, so I hope you enjoy. The first is going to be this Montblanc Meisterstück Sport Full Calendar Dual Time. What a name. This watch was a gift from my father, so it does hold some sentimental value to me, but I will rate it objectively and without bias. The way I review watches is by scoring them on a rubric in categories such as the case and bracelet, dial movement, brand and heritage, in order to get a total score. I then apply a value multiplier to get a value score. I then rank the watches that I've reviewed and then give a completely subjective, biased opinion on the watch that has more to do with my feelings, my personal connection to the watch, and just how I like to buy watches. But before we can begin to score the watch against the rubric, we need to understand the design philosophy behind the watch. This watch is a luxury sports watch that is meant for perhaps upscale recreational activities. It is meant for a good life. So let's get to it. We'll start with the function, feel, and visual appeal of the case and bracelet. The style of the watch is fairly original. That's not to say there aren't other watches like it, but it's not a blatant copy or homage. It does seem to draw inspiration from watches of the 50s and 60s with the straight lugs, but the thickness of the lugs are more modern. The lugs are also rounded and curved downwards. The case has a rounded top and bottom, making the watch wear very comfortably. In fact, the case and bracelet all have this rounded design language. There's not a sharp corner to touch at all. The case is polished all around and has steps and channels to create separation and interest. The mid-case is engraved on both sides, Montblanc, Meisterstück, and has a striping finish on the interior. The crown also has the Montblanc star. And finally, the star is embossed on the first link under the 6 o'clock end link. The branding is a little heavy-handed. However, the crown is well sized and easy to manipulate, and the bracelet is well made. Not so easy to manipulate are the pushers for the complications on dial. The decision was made for elegance, but it really hurts the functionality of the watch. The end links are solid and fit the curves of the lugs well. The three-piece bracelet is covered in steps and bevels, is polished and brushed, and articulates very well. There's a lot of added complexity here. The butterfly clasp, though, has no way of micro-adjusting it, and it's hard to get the bracelet size correctly as a result. But the mechanism engages well. The clasp is machined, and it all feels sturdy and made for durability. A final word on the bracelet: the tolerances are very good. It feels incredible. The case back lets you know one last time that you've purchased a Montblanc Meisterstück, along with some details about the watch. Back to the front of the watch, there is a double-domed sapphire crystal with no AR treatment. 7 out of 10 for form, 7.5 out of 10 for function. Let's move on to that dial. It's black with an irregular sandpaper texture. The indices are embossed and polished, but there are some visible scratches in the polish under magnification. The indices are in stylized Old English Arabic numerals. The main hands are of the leaf type and are lume-filled. The second hand is a stick type and is easily lost, even when actively searching for it. There are 3 complications: day, date, and second time zone. These numerals are more like an Arial or Calibri font. The sub-register hands are lozenge style and also lume filled. The differing styles help separate the two parts of the dial, but the latter don't add anything to the overall design of the watch. These subregisters have a metallic concentric circle finishing, which hold up well under magnification. The dual time register is largest, and the accompanying hand is painted red for accent. All polished parts have minor scratches on them. The dial uses polishing on all parts of the watch that are meant to be red. However, the way that light works with this dial makes it very hard to see the polished parts at times. The printing, though, is very finely executed and easy to read. The loom is no longer working as it is tritium, but has not started to change color. The tritium broke on one of the subregister hands, and all the hands were replaced in service, so those now have superluminova. However, that does not affect the scoring of the watch. 7 out of 10 for form, 3 out of 10 for function. Let's move on to that movement. The movement in this watch is the proven classic ETA 2892 with an engraved rotor and some finishing. It is not advertised to run within any particular time tolerance. That said, this movement is time tested and a known commodity. It has 3 complications that use pushers to make adjustments, moving the hands forward 1 push at a time. Not the most refined or elegant solution, I'm afraid. This is further complicated by the fact that one of the pushers moves 2 hands, and I can never remember which it is, so it takes extra time figuring that out when I'm setting the watch. It has the industry standard 28,800 beats per hour and has a power reserve of 42 hours. This particular movement has been serviced due to the aforementioned loom issue. So that's a 6 out of 10 for form, 6 out of 10 for function, bringing us to a total objective score of 36.5. Let's move on to our slightly more subjective category, brand heritage and prestige. Well, there's honestly not much to say here. The brand only started making watches in 1997. Prior to that, they have a great history of making high quality fountain pens, but that can't really be used in the scoring of this brand as a watch brand. In the short time, they have made great progress, to be sure, eventually integrating Minerva movements into their watches and making some great designs in the last 3 to 4 years. They do have a following among watch enthusiasts, but it is a minority. Most people who buy the watches are casual watch buyers. For their recent efforts and overall brand recognition, I will give them a 5.5 out of 10, bringing the total score up to 42 out of 70. This watch was produced in the late 90s or early 2000s and is no longer in production. If anyone knows more, please comment below and let me know. I couldn't find anything else. You can currently find these in pretty good condition between $1,400 and $2,500 USD. For the value multiplier equation, I'll use $1,800. You should be able to find a good example of this almost 20-year-old watch for that price. That means that the value multiplier will be 1.183 for this watch, and the value score is 49.686. The watch comes in near dead last in total score of the watches I've reviewed so far at number 12, and is dead last for value. So that brings me to my personal opinion on this watch. Well, it does have great sentimental value to me, as it was passed down to me from my father, and this was the watch that my dad wore when he worked overseas in his import-export business. So to me, it reminds me of taking care of the family, doing work, sacrifices, and so for that, I really appreciate it. And when I see it sitting on a table or in the watch box, I really like looking at it. From that distance that's not directly on your wrist. When I do put it on my wrist though, it just doesn't really speak to me in a lot of ways aesthetically. The numerals and the hands, the main hands, they are of one style that really work well with the case, I believe. But the sub-registers and the engravings and the logo, they're all of a completely different style. And the clash of those two styles is kind of confusing for me. It just doesn't look that good when you're at this kind of 1 foot distance. And for anyone who is familiar with the channel and my opinions of watches, legibility is paramount for me. And there are so many different lighting conditions where the numerals just completely disappear. The hands sometimes are very hard to read because they're so thin. And so it kind of reminds me of a dress watch in that sense, for a dinner party or something where you're not always looking at the time to see, what time it is. But it's supposed to be a sports watch. It's supposed to be a watch that you use in a recreational setting, and that you should be able to see the time easily and quickly. And the last thing is that the time setting just sucks on it. If you don't wear the watch often, or if it winds down often, rather, if you're someone who habitually changes watches, the pushers are a pain to work with. And for me, I don't even set any of them anymore. I just use the watch as a three-hander, and I think that's a shame because as also those of you who follow the channel know, I really love dual time and GMT watches. I think that the GMT complication is the most useful complication in my life, and I wish that it was easier to set. Of course, if you're only setting one time zone, for example, I keep track of Central Time Zone sometimes and Mountain Time Zone sometimes in the United States. You just set it once and it works. But for daylight savings, for when you need to track a different time zone, it is a pain. And the day and the date, it also just, it's not pleasant to set those. So I often just use it as a three-hander and just move on. All right, do you agree with the scoring? Do you have any comments to make about the rubric or value multiplier? Is there any watch you'd like to see me review or any content you'd like to see me make? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for making it through to the end. And if you'd like, give me a subscribe and a like. Thanks. Have a good day. Bye.